Today we're going to talk about something really tough, a devastating tragedy that happened in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's a story that shines a harsh light on the critical and often deadly link between domestic violence and gun laws. And we're going to break down what happened based on reporting from CBS News.
Just listen to these words from Shreveport Councilmember Tabitha Taylor, a local official trying to make sense of an unthinkable event. She says, "These are the residual effects of what happens if we're not paying attention." It really sets the stage for a story that's about so much more than just a single crime.
So what happened here? The details are just horrific. A gunman killed 8 children. 7 of them were his own, and he left their 2 mothers, one of them his wife, seriously wounded. This wasn't just a local tragedy. It became the nation's deadliest mass shooting in over 2 years, and it's forcing a really hard conversation about a deeply painful issue.
All right, so let's start with what actually unfolded in this Shreveport community.
You know, city leaders were really clear about this. This was not some random act of violence. They said it was the devastating outcome of what they called a true epidemic of domestic violence in their city, a problem they already knew was there, which just exploded into this public catastrophe.
So what happened in this one city actually points to a much bigger, well-documented problem across the country. Let's dig into that connection.
And this really gets to the core of it. According to experts like Sam Levy at Everytown for Gun Safety, the link between firearms and domestic violence, well, it's not a coincidence. It's one of the most predictable and dangerous patterns in America. And the numbers, they're just staggering. I mean, look at this. Decades of research have shown that just having a gun present in a domestic violence situation makes it 5 times more likely that a woman will be killed. 5 times. It just completely changes the level of danger.
And it's not just about intimate partners. The danger extends to kids, too. It's actually a pretty shocking fact that firearm injuries are now the single leading cause of death for children and teens right here in the U.S.
And when you look at the scale of domestic violence overall, well, it's just massive. The Bureau of Justice Statistics found that almost 5.4 million Americans reported being victims in just the last 5 years. So this isn't some rare thing. It's a widespread crisis.
Now, what's really important to understand here is that this violence doesn't hit everyone the same. Advocacy groups have found again and again that women of color carry a disproportionate burden. They're the primary victims where domestic violence and guns tragically intersect.
Okay, so if we know this connection is so deadly, where is the system breaking down? Well, advocates point to what they call dangerous gaps in state laws, especially in places like Louisiana.
So let's break this down. On one hand, you have federal law, right? It says licensed gun dealers have to run background checks on buyers. Simple enough. But in Louisiana, there's no state requirement for private sellers. You know, someone selling a gun from their home or at a gun show. Advocates call this a major gap.
And the consequence of that gap is pretty obvious. It means a person who is legally prohibited from owning a gun, maybe because of a criminal conviction, could potentially just go buy one from a private seller, and their record might never even come up.
This brings us to another tool people are talking about, the extreme risk law, or what you've probably heard called a red flag law. Basically, it's a legal process. It lets family or the police ask a court to temporarily remove guns from someone who is showing clear signs of being a danger to themselves or other people. Louisiana doesn't have a law like this.
And Louisiana isn't some outlier here. As you can see from this chart, fewer than half of all U.S. states have adopted this type of law. That means this specific tool for intervention just isn't available in most of the country.
So, as you can imagine, in the aftermath of the Shreveport shooting, these specific gaps in the law, they are now front and center in a really urgent push for reform.
So what's the argument for these laws? Well, supporters say it's all about being proactive. It's about empowering the people who see the warning signs firsthand, like family and law enforcement, to step in before a tragedy happens, not just react after the fact.
So you might be wondering, how could this have applied in Shreveport? The shooter didn't actually have any domestic abuse convictions on his record, but he did have a prior weapons charge. A red flag law isn't just about a past criminal record, it's about current dangerous behavior, which could have made it a really relevant tool here. And this really brings it all home. Sam Levy calls it the human toll, the absolutely devastating cost of failing to put even the most basic safeguards in place to try and stop these kinds of predictable tragedies.
And so, all of this leaves us with a really tough but really vital question.
As communities like Shreveport are forced to grapple with this kind of unimaginable loss, it forces us all to take a hard look at the role that policy can, and maybe should, play at this tragic intersection of domestic crisis and deadly violence.